Welcome to the Board Game Design Lab tutorial series, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. I will be your host, Chris Perea. In this series, we'll give you, the designers, the tools and information you need to get your ideas from concept into digital prototype and more. In this episode, we will start the process of designing some prototype cards for you to import into Tabletop Simulator. This process will span a few tutorial videos, but stay tuned and we'll have your cards uploaded in no time. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. So I already went ahead and opened up Inkscape, and we're going to start designing your cards. So what I like to do is make sure that when we start the design process of your cards, we're going to make them to spec, so if you did want to print these on your home printer or whatever and cut them out, you don't have to re-edit them or anything, because it's really easy to forget that you're not designing to spec in Inkscape. So you could be designing a beautiful card, but it's huge, and if you print it, it'll take like 20 sheets to print it. So we're going to make sure that we stay within the constraints of actual printing. Not only will this make this process easier for testing if you want to make an actual copy, but when you start to send it off to producers, they will have the right size. It'll make the whole conversion process to their specific file format much, much easier. So what we're going to start doing is we're going to look up the exact dimensions of a playing card, because I don't know them off the top of my head. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Chrome here. I'm going to get over to Google and go and just Google it. What is the dimensions of a standard playing card? Perfect. So, see here, 2.5 poker size. That's the size I like. 2.5 by 3.5 inches. Now, in Inkscape, everything's easier to do in millimeters, and everything's easier to do in millimeters as a whole for the producers that's going to actually make your game, because a lot of them are based over in Europe and China and various other places that use the metric system by default. So when you send them something in inches, they have to do the conversion, and they're not going to want to do it. So let's just keep it all in millimeters and make sure everything's going to work great. So we need a 64 by 89 millimeter rectangle for our border and our bleed. So I'm going to get back over to Inkscape, and I'm going to go over to this blue rectangle and square tool, and I'm going to drag out a rectangle. Now I'm going to go to the up top here, that's the width and height. As you can see, this is already in millimeters. You can change it to inches if you want, or centimeters, pixels. Like I said, we want to keep it in millimeters for the producers that's going to be making your game, so the conversion and everything else is much easier. And when they ask you any sizes, for like the box, for example, you can tell them, hey, it's this by this, and they'll know exactly what you're talking about. So right now, it's 79 by 106, so that's way too big. And we need to get down to 64 by 89. So I'm just going to go 64 width, 89 height. Now this card, if you print it, will print the exact size of a playing card, which is going to be awesome. Now, what we're going to do is, I had standard settings on here that has a fill. I'm going to take out the fill. So I'm going to go over to my fill and stroke menu, and I'm just going to turn the fill to white. I'm not going to say no fill, because that'll make it invisible. And when you import it into Tabletop Simulator, you can actually see through the cards. It looks super cool, and you can use that. I guess you can print see-through cards. It takes a little bit more design work, but for now, we're just going to make sure everything is white. So we got our card, and the border here is important on the card too. You want it to look nice. You want to have a nice curve to it so it actually looks like a playing card that's been cut out. So I'm going to go to the stroke and paint and make sure it is on black, all black. You can do a different color if you need. I'm going to just make a basic prototype cards, a couple of them. And then I'm going to go stroke style. Now you can cut the corners different styles. I like rounded, and I want mine to be just a little bit thicker to add a little bit more bleed outside of the card. Now, if you don't know what bleed is, for printing, what bleed is the printers aren't absolutely perfect. And the cutting process and everything else isn't absolutely perfect. So there's a little bit of bleed that you need to have. Now, this little bit that I added isn't going to be enough bleed for certain producers. It might be fine for others. Just keep that in mind that you got a safe area. Usually the outline of your card is going to be considered the bleed. So that'll be cut off. So it'll be just black around it. And a lot of people, when you go into the production, you have to have it like solid black. You can't have the corners or anything. For us importing into Tabletop Simulator, we need the corners to be transparent and rounded, so when we import it, it looks like an actual cut card, rather than the printing process that when they print the sheets and cut them, they'll cut out all that excess bleed, and it won't be on the final product. So I just increased that a little bit until I think it looks good, and we need to adjust this back down to the right size. I just want the thicker outline on my card just because I think it looks nice. So we need to go back down to 64 by 89. Okay. So now we have the card with the thicker outline and the correct dimensions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make just a handful of cards just to show you the process. So I'm going to click on my card, hold down Control, hit D to duplicate, and hold Control down so it goes horizontally straight across, and draw another one. And then I'm going to hold Control D, duplicate, drag another one. So there we go. I'm just going to do this a few times and fill up a standard sheet here. Okay. Now all of this is on layer 1, which is fine for now. I'm going to name this layer, I don't know, starting cards. So that way I can hide this layer. I can have multiple layers of cards that I can flip in between to edit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this and go duplicate current layer. So now you'll see two of the same name. One of them just has copy at the end. I'm going to rename this to, this is going to be the template card layer. So this way I can always duplicate the template layer and have the same setup for all my other layers. So now I'm going to go back to the starting cards. I'm going to move this above the template layer, and I'm going to hide the template layer with the little eyeball here so we don't see it and we don't accidentally edit the template layer. All we want to edit is the starting cards layer. So we have 9 cards here, and we're going to just start designing some cards. So I'm going to go over to my text tool, and I'm going to drag out a text box, and I'm going to go, I'm designing a card game right now, so I'm going to show you some of the cards I'm going to add into it, and just the basic structure of them all. So, armor level 1. So I'm going to click on my select and transform tool. I'm going to move that. I'm actually going to center this onto the card. So click on the text, click on the card in the background, go down to our, or up to, I guess in this case, our align. I'm going to align it center. Now I don't want to align it middle because I don't want to be in the middle of the card. However, I do want this text a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go back to my text tool, and then I'm going to Control A to highlight all the text. And I'm going to change this to sans serif just for now, and bold, and just a little bit bigger, just so it's nice, easy, clear to see. And then I'm going to recenter this. There we go. Now I need to add a cost to this card. So I'm going to go back to my text. I'm going to come down here to the bottom left, and I'm going to put a cost. Oops. Okay, let's do that again. Change that to sans serif. Let's go bold. 16. I'm going to turn this up to 18 so it matches what this is, which is not that. It is 19 for that. So I'm going to turn that up to, okay, 19.99. So now all the text is going to look exactly the same if we make everything the same, which is good for uniformity. So I'm going to make an arbitrary cost down here, and I'm not sure what the cost is going to be, but I'm going to start with 2 because I think that sounds right for my design. Now, I need to make an armor level 2 and an armor level 3 for my game. So what I'm going to do, instead of remaking all of this, I'm just going to click on this, click on this. So click on the armor level 1 text and the cost text, and I'm going to right click on it, go to group. So now they're grouped together as one single item. And I'm going to hit Control D, duplicate, and then I'm going to hold down Shift and click on this next card. So I got my group of armor level 1 and the cost selected, and my next card selected. And then I'm just going to go to the Align tool and go centered. Perfect. And now I'm going to do that again with the next card. So click on that, hit Control D, hold down Shift, click on the next card, and align it center. So now I got 3 copies of this card, but I want an armor level 2 and an armor level 3. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go to my text tool, and I'm going to change this to a 2, change this to a 4, click on this, go 3, and change this to a 6. There we go. So now we got our 3 armor cards. I'm not going to put any pictures or descriptions or anything. So at this point, I know what they do. I know what the relative description should be. You can add anything else that you want to this card that's acceptable for your game that you need to design. I'm going to keep it simple and basic for the tutorial here. So I'm going to need 6 more cards here. So I'm going to actually highlight all 3 of these. Oops, not the background there. Make sure you get the text, the grouped object of the text on your cards. And I'm going to hit duplicate, and I'm going to scoot these down. And then I'm going to duplicate again, and hold Control and scoot those down. So now we have a little bit of an issue if you look at all of these cards. They're not all aligned correctly, right? Some of them are lower, some of them are higher, and kind of somewhere in between. So I'm going to go select all 3 of these texts, and then I'm going to select one of the background cards since all of those are aligned together. And I'm going to align center. So that moved that group. When you group items and you do the align function, it'll align that group of items from the center of wherever the group is, not the center of each individual object. So I'm going to do that again for all of my other cards and make sure they're all centered up and look uniform. So select all 3 text, select one of the background cards since they're already aligned, go over to our Align tool and go Align Center on Horizontal Axis. Those didn't move much. I got those almost perfect. That's cool. But I'm going to do it again here. Perfect. So now I got to change the text of these last 6 cards. So I'm going to go gun level 1, gun level 2, and gun level 3. Now if you look, something got screwed up when we changed that text. And what it is it's left aligned in that text box. And we want it to be center aligned in that text box. So when we do all this, it turns out center in the card still, and we don't have to move that bottom left cost text down there. So I'm going to click on my text tool, click on the text, highlight it, go centered. Oh no, hold on a second. I'm going to Control Z all of this and go back to where it says armor, level 1, level 2, level 3. Now I'm going to go to the text. I'm going to highlight this armor. I'm going to go center, highlight this, click in there, hit Control A to select everything. So when you see the blue box pop up, you can click in there so your icon's in there, hit Control A, it'll select all the text, and then go centered. So now I'm going to change this to gun, and it'll stay centered in the card. This is all things you kind of got to keep in mind of and get used to. And it'll make your design process easier. If you always keep the idea of uniformity and making everything look the same your prototypes will turn out looking better than they could have. So now that everything looks the same, I'm going to go ahead and finish off these last 3 cards, and I'm going to end the video here. So go ahead and go in, make your basic cards, get them ready to go, and in the next video we're going to cut them up, we're going to export them all separately, and we're going to get them into the deck editor program of Tabletop Simulator. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notified of new uploads, and listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts at. Get in touch with the community over at our Facebook page, or talk with other designers in our Discord channel. All the links at BoardGameDesignLab.com or in the description below.